Alright guys, so you just opened up Maya for the first time, and this is what you see. You have this gray sort of viewport area here. And I'm going to go over these different toolbars to see what, to show you what everything it kind of is. It's going to be a very surface level sort of thing. Um, but yeah, so I'd like to start with just camera movements in general. If you have, if you're modeling anything in Maya, you're going to need to rotate and kind of pan that camera around there. So in order to do that, you'd hold Alt left click, and that'll let you rotate around. Let me get a 3D object in there so you can kind of see. Um, so you kind of Alt and left click, so that'll just rotate around kind of an arbitrary pivot point. If you want to snap that pivot point to something, then left click it to select it, press F, and you can kind of look at that. In addition to that, if you want to zoom in and out, just scroll in and out, but you'll see that you can kind of lock up when you get super close to something, and it will like scroll in, it'll zoom in less. So if you're running into problems with that, you can hold Alt and right click. It's going to dolly it. But if you want to kind of move your camera over to the left or right and kind of see a different part of the scene, you Alt and hold middle click and drag. So you're just dragging all that stuff around. And it's good to get really familiar with this because you're going to be navigating these scenes all the time, absolutely. So that's the camera. Now, if we look at this perimeter, you'll see a lot of stuff that's kind of overwhelming in what it is. But if we just kind of take it slow, you can kind of learn what a lot of these buttons do, and which ones you use more, which ones you use less. Now, this top menu is kind of where all of your tools are stored, but it also has some default tools as well, or not tools, but settings and stuff that are always in here. Like file, you have like save as, new scene, open scene, all that stuff in there, as well as importing and exporting scenes. So if you have like geometry that you're sending somewhere else or taking from somewhere else, then this is where you do it. I'm not going to go into all of these because they aren't important immediately, but just know that if you're watching some sort of other tutorial and you see like a different set of buttons on here, it's probably because they're using a different menu set. Your menu sets are in here, and you have different kind of settings in here that if you click on them, you'll see that they represent different parts of the pipeline. So we're starting with modeling, and we're going to do some box modeling, some subdivision modeling in here. You also got rigging and animation. Rigging makes the skeleton that the animators use to move around characters. And then we're not going to touch on FX, really. But rendering has settings for making that final crisp image. And you'll see that as I'm going through those, all the tools are swapping out. Now, this next kind of bar of tools is the status line. But it has some, it's a little bit of a hodgepodge because it has some rendering settings over here, and it has some snapping settings over here. So if you're moving something around and you want to snap to verts, notice I'm pressing the hotkey, which is V, but I'm holding that, and you'll see that it's kind of highlighting this snapping. So I'm snapping to each different vert of that cube, and it also has like new, document, save, undo, redo, but I would say mostly just handle that through hotkeys and stuff. Now this shelf has more tools. So we're in the modeling shelf right now. You can kind of just click these buttons to create primitives and move them around. As long as you're pressing the W key to go into the move tool. But we're going to get more into that. But yeah, so this is divided up based on what exactly you're doing. Again, you can just see all the settings for the main category for what these are in there. And on the right hand side, you'll see your channel box. Now, channel box has a few different things in it. So for this top section, this is just your translation or your transform values, I guess. And if you're moving this around with W, you'll notice that these numbers correspond to exactly where they are. Now, what they don't correspond to are the individual components of this. So if I move this vert, that information is going to be the same as when I was just moving this chief object as one. And the same goes for rotating it. Notice how those values are changing up in the top right. And the same for scaling it. Now below that, you have your layers. And the layers work for adding. It's basically to kind of control what you're displaying in Maya. Like say you want only one character shown, then this is where you're going to do that. Say I didn't want to see these objects. I would just select them and then create a new layer with the selected objects. So I do that, and I can turn them off and on. Boom, bang, right there. And that's kind of, you can double click the layer, kind of name it whatever you want. And that's pretty much it for layers. You can also set them on different settings. Like if this rightmost box is R, then it means reference, and you can't select it. So you have to unclick that R. You can select them again very nicely. Now that's it for the channel box. Pretty much, you can get some more inputs in here when you initialize an object, but it's not important right now. But in addition to the channel box, you also have your attribute editor. Now the attribute editor has a lot of settings in here. A lot of settings. It kind of goes through each different node that's involved with an object. So if you have like deformers on something, they'll pop up in here, and you can kind of change the settings within that. You also have the shader applied to your object, or the material applied to your object, and you can see that when I'm dragging this around, it's kind of controlling all those because this is one material that they're all inheriting right there. And yeah, so that's it for the attribute editor. You probably won't use a lot of it starting out, but it has some nice little things in there that you can mess around with. Now on the left side, you have your main tools for moving and scaling and rotating, as well as some selection tools. You can click the buttons over here, but I highly recommend using a keyboard. If you don't have your fingers on the keyboard using hotkeys, you're going to be slow. It's going to be hard to get things done in a timely manner. You can see that I'm scaling this object up and just moving it around, rotating it, and I'm achieving that all through W, E, and R. Q is just selecting, so it'll just go around to these different ones. But I'm just pressing W for move, E for rotate, and R for scale. Don't ask me why R is not rotate. That's just how Maya is. I don't know. And let's see, right under that you have some camera settings. But again, I would say approach this with hotkeys because it's just a lot quicker. Now, what these are just kind of different camera layouts for what you're looking at. Now, in order to use the hotkeys for this, it's just spacebar. I'm just pressing spacebar, and I'm going into these different views. This is all the same scene, just from different cameras. And this perspective camera is different from all of these ones because no matter how close, like this front Z is coming from this direction over here, and so if I slide this object towards it, and if I have this open as well, you'll see that it's updating left to right. But when I slide it forward and backward, it's not changing. That's because it's an orthographic camera, which doesn't really exist in real life. It's just, imagine if everything was kind of scanned down into one dimension, or I guess 2 dimensions, like up and to the right there. So I can move it like that, but I can't even see this other axis. And the same goes for moving left and right on this red x-axis for this X orthographic camera. Notice how it doesn't get bigger as it comes closer to you, as it normally would in a perspective camera. And finally, well, let's make sure I didn't pass up anything. Yeah, looks like good. And finally, we have our timeline down here. So if you're doing some animation, and I'm just setting 2 keys on this on these meshes right here. If you drag through here, it'll update, and you can kind of just play it back. And it's playing in turbo speed right now. And if you right click that bad boy, you'll get a bunch of options in there. And I'll set that to real time. So now it's going at my 24 frames per second. But yeah, so that's pretty much that. The main UI elements we're going to be dealing with throughout the class. It was just a cursory glance at them, but I hope it made it a little bit more digestible. All right, thanks.